Uh, you are asking someone about home that who has a home in a war zone, but since you are an artist, I'm gonna tell you where is my home. My home is my cave, my dark time. When I'm in the dark, and then I try to make art. I try to find some hope, and that's what I call home. It's the place where you can be blooming, and I don't know where you find yourself, but by example, for me, I find myself in my art school now in Paris. I find myself in my work because those two places, they make me feel I'm blooming and I'm being able to communicate and express myself much better visually.
I'm Susan Spurlock, Executive Director of Ford Hall Forum at Suffolk University. I'm pleased to welcome you to the final program in our series, Beyond Borders, Women's Stories and the Art of Bearing Witness. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, we've welcomed 3 fascinating storytellers who graced the Ford Hall Forum Zoom stage to share their artistry and their extraordinary stories of hope, survival, bravery, and courage. In this afternoon's final program of the series, Behind the Lens, Unveiling Misconceptions and Documenting the War, Yemeni photojournalist Amira Al-Sharif will discuss her nearly 2-decade career in which she has documented the multicultural lives of women, the beauty in ordinary daily life, and now the horror of a long-raging and brutal war. Through stunning images of her beloved country of Yemen, Amira bears witness to what has been termed the worst man-made humanitarian crisis in the world. Amira will talk about her lifelong bond with the camera, her work to unveil misconceptions, and her struggles to keep documenting the lived experiences while finding glimmers of hope in a place consumed by conflict and suffering. Using the lens of her camera and unlocking her bittersweet memories, Amira relives her artistic mission to rescue the fleeting, hiding, or missing scenes from her journey as a war photographer. Amira, it is wonderful to welcome you back to Suffolk. You have many, many friends here and in the audience who wish you all the very best. It is now my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's moderator, Dr. Shoshanna Madmoni Gerber, a faculty member in the Communication, Journalism, and Media Department at Suffolk University. Shoshi, here's to you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Salam alaikum and bonjour. Thank you, Susan, for this beautiful introduction. And thanks to my friend and colleagues, Michelle Plott, Barbara Abrams, and Yanni Moreno for helping organize the Beyond the Borders series together. And also, of course, thank you to Annie and Lauren Joe at WGBH for producing tonight's event and making this Zoom magic happen. It is my honor to welcome noted Paris-based Yemeni photographer and my friend, Amira Al-Sharif. Amira was born in Saudi Arabia and raised in Sana'a, Yemen, the birthplace of my parents. She graduated from the University of Sana'a with a degree in English literature and art, and later got a degree in photojournalism from the International Center of Photography in New York. In 2019, Amira earned a residency in the International City of Artists in Paris through the ICORN program. This is a very important organization of cities and regions around the world that are offering shelter to writers and artists and journalists who are at risk, carrying a mission to advance freedom of expression and defending democratic values and promoting international solidarity. Before leaving her beloved Yemen, Amira spent several years documenting the ongoing civil war that now enters its 6th year. Welcome, Amira. Masai al khair. I'm so excited to host you today.
Nur, Professor Shama, thank you for having me. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm really happy to be with all of you. Thank you.
So I want to start with just a little bit of background to remind the audience about the ongoing conflict. So the war is rooted in the political crisis following the Arab Spring in 2011. And after a long-time authoritarian president, Ali Abdallah Saleh, that was in rule for nearly 30 years, was forced to hand power to his deputy Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi. Over several years, Hadi's weak leadership drove many ordinary Yemenis to support the Houthis, who are also known sometimes as rebels, who gradually took over the capital Sana'a in late 2014 and early 2015, essentially fueling the ongoing conflict between supporters of Salah, which are Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and their Western allies, and the Houthis backed up by Iran. So Yemen is also kind of stuck there in a global conflict. The main victims, of course, are the Yemeni people. According to Oxfam, Yemen is now facing a catastrophic humanitarian crisis, which by some estimates killed over 230,000 people from direct and indirect causes. Millions of people are displaced, and about 80% of the populations are in need of humanitarian assistance purely for survival. The latest data I saw from the UN show that more than 2 million Yemeni children under the age of 5 are expected to endure acute malnutrition in 2021, which may lead to the death of 400,000 of those kids. So by any measure, devastating prediction. And I want to start, Amira, by asking you, in addition to this really devastating numbers and data, I want to ask you about the war from your perspective. What are some of the most precious aspects of life that are lost in a war zone that many of us who don't witness this firsthand, that you experienced?
As you may know, that during the war, it's not one aspect would be affected, it's everything. It affects the weather, the health, everything. And I would just make a small example to make it easier to understand. Water. During all this year, we didn't have access to clean water. And my family would be really standing in long rows to collect water. And in case we had to bring it from other part of the city, we had to factor the money for petrol. So it is so costly, and I would say war is the opposite of clean water. And if you follow the news, we just had the most worst cholera in the modern history, because we didn't have any. We had a dirty water. We didn't have any self-defense ways to prevent the virus from spreading.
So those are some of the indirect causes that are causing for all this massive loss of life. I'm sure that COVID also exacerbated the problem.
Definitely. Just to make it easier, because being now in France, I get to realize it's hard to people in the West to imagine the situation in Yemen, especially when you have everything, like you have clean water, and then you have all means to have good hygiene, but none of this is really available in Yemen.
Right. And we tend to take things for granted. So obviously we don't think about, just opening the tap whenever we need it. So I want to step back for a minute before we continue. We're going to continue to talk about documenting the war. But I want to ask you, and obviously the reasons that eventually made you leave, I want to start by asking you about growing up in Yemen and their circumstances that made you fall in love with photography. So I know that your father gifted you the first camera when you were just 8 years old. How did this gift change your life?
Yes, and this gift of my father, in fact, it is so special gift until now, because see me now, I'm photographer. I'm the one that my father wanted me to be, maybe, because he just gave me really a good weapon. And it helped me having this camera to be open to the world around me and in me. And with time, it became part of my body, my mirror, my window. Yeah.
It becomes a part of who you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, you and I met over 10 years ago now in 2010 through my friend and colleague Deb Geisler, who saw your Kickstarter campaign and sent it to me because she knew that I was from Yemen too, and my family is from Yemen. And I was so excited to meet someone like you that's from the birthplace of my father and mother. Right, because I've never actually been in Yemen. And I felt, when I still remember that watching those images, that it kind of filled a void, and it helped me kind of satisfy this curiosity about what this place looked like. So I will forever be grateful for that. So I wanted to start by sharing some of those images of that first campaign and the way in which you introduced Yemen to American audience. Let's watch.
Hi, my name is Amira Al-Sharif. I was born in Saudi Arabia and grew up in Yemen. As you may know, these are very conservative societies. While some women are allowed to work, being as female photojournalist is practically unheard of. I have to fight all my life for my education. I'm the first person in my family who has graduated from university. When I take photos on streets, many times men came to me, pretend to be a police and trying to take my camera, and all because I am a woman. Yet, I continue photography because I love it, and it's my way to communicate. Photography is very important because a lot of people are illiterate in Yemen, but they can understand many issues through images. In almost every aspect of Yemeni culture, men and women kept separate. Women have their own separate schools, their own separate sections in restaurants, and even kept separate in social events, where they are allowed to remove their veil and feel more comfortable. Being a female photojournalist, I'm allowed to witness and document their lives in a way that none of my male colleagues are allowed to do. I'm telling you all this because I'll be attending a one-year certificate program at the School of the International Center of Photography in New York. I've never been in the United States before, and this is the opportunity of a lifetime for me. I'm looking for your support during my year in America. My project will be documenting the lives of American women my age and to compare and contrast them with the lives of the Yemeni young women. I feel there is much to learn beyond what I say about America from the television and the news. I also hope to show the people of America that there is much to learn about the people of Yemen, more than what they heard from the media. I would love to say that this opportunity will change my life forever.
Pretty amazing. And I know I'm speaking for everybody now when I say that we are ready to have you back. So I wanted to ask you about the point that you make in regards to the visual language. The camera is a visual language, and it's how important it is not only for documenting, but also for connecting people. How did you experience that?
Because it's an easy language. It doesn't matter your language or where you come from. People, they communicate easier with photos. you would show a photo to any nationalities, and then it's an easy language to be read and understood and felt.
And even somebody I know like Saadia, which we're going to talk about a little later, even somebody who, you know, she couldn't read and write, but she could still negotiate, write with you.
She could even visualize how the photo gonna be.
How it's gonna look. Mm-hmm. And when I'm looking at your photos documenting the war, it's pretty amazing to see how you always find kind of a unique angle to show that life continues. You're not showing those usual images. So I'm wondering if you can tell us about your perspective of why you chose to show, for example, this picture.
I selected this picture because it was not as how the international media was showing Yemen. And it was for me much better communicating because I know the world already saw so many bloody pictures for Yemen, but that was not the ultimate truth for me. And also it was painful for us to see kids with their bones in first pages of the newspaper. So for me, I would do it in another way to speak. We have poverty and the situation is really bad and we just scattered because of the war. So I tried to do something to show the other part of the truth. And because I truly believe people communicate more with beauty, not with bloody images. And because the world is, especially now in Corona time, everybody is already having their own pain and miseries, and they truly wanted source of inspiration and hope.
Yeah, so it's important not just to show the situation, but also to inspire and kind of draw people to the common humanities, you know, like seeing those birds in the background of the smoke. I know that you have written about this, so you're not just taking photos, but you also wrote about it, especially in a best-selling collection titled Our Women on the Ground, Essays by Arab Women Reporting from the Arab World. And I'm wondering if you would read for us a passage from your essay that kind of demonstrate your experience.
Yeah, I will. Despite death, famine, and misery, life continues in Yemen. This bittersweet reality of mammoth and starved bodies consisting with the most routine aspect of daily life has defined my approach to imagery. I have hope in this darkness. We can't bring back the died or restore the disabled, the disfigured, and the limbless. We can't bring back the ruins of ancient Yemen, our historical paradise lost. But we can hope and we can fight. Yemen will one day once again be known for its cinema, its mocha coffee, its clothes, its Jewish musician, its island, and its caves. It will be a tourist destination. The youth who have fled the country with their families will return.
It's such a beautiful vision, inshallah, is what I have to say for that, God willing. I know that much of the bombing was taking place in Sana'a, where your family resides. How are they doing? How are the members of your family doing?
In fact, the bombings is happening in all cities of Yemen, not only Sana'a.
Yeah.
To answer how is my family doing, I think of my internal words of my sister Hayat, who is an amazing photographer and a mother. We belong to peace, not war. Right now, my family and many millions of Yemenis are not where they belong. Home is a war zone. And though my family, as we can see in the photo, they are really beautiful spirits. And my younger sister, she just started her business, artificial flowers, because she was telling me she wanted to bring a sense of beauty that was disappeared because of the poverty and war. So this is my sister and in my family yard.
This is pretty amazing that they think about, because we wouldn't think about the absence of flowers in a war zone. And I'm thinking even when we were in lockdown
It's
here,
important.
yeah, how it was important to me when I was thinking about the groceries to get. I always said, okay, and we need fresh flowers, because it kind of still kept you a little bit in touch with normalcy. And I know you told me that even flower stores, right, in Paris were allowed.
Yeah, it was one of it was mentioned in the essential list to be opened during the lockdown. So it was nice when I read it in the news. I was really happy to be in Paris.
Yes, because they right.
It means it's not war, because last year the president was saying it's war, and it feels scary for me, war again.
And to hear that this term was misused.
Yeah, because I know what it is war, but when I read in the list, flower shop gonna be open, I was like, wow, I'm really happy to be in a beautiful country like France.
Yeah. I want to get us back to talking a little bit about documenting the war. And you've mentioned this in the Kickstarter video about the conservative nature of Yemeni culture and some of the fights that you had to maintain to keep your camera, to keep doing what you wanted to do without being disrupted. And I know that somehow you always find a way to push the boundaries and do the impossible, like traveling alone. You told me that you had to travel through the desert for 7 hours by yourself. You're insisting to document people's life while the war is raging on. And I want to tell everybody that you were recently a finalist in the Most Resilient Journalist Award, which is a very competitive award. And before we talk about this, I want to share with the audience your video entry, and so they can see in action how you were doing. How are you documenting the war, your travels?
My name is Amira Al-Sharif. I'm a Paris-based Yemeni photographer with over 17 years of experience working across my beloved country, Yemen. For years, I have captured intimate stories in Yemen's war, famine, and diseases affected cities and countryside, traveling north to south through rebel and government checkpoints, facing arrest, sometimes worse, to photograph the enduring spirit of my beloved people. Since the war began nearly 5 years ago, the majority of these beautiful pictures have put my life at risk. Even if the outcomes looks beautiful, destruction, danger, or death often wait just beyond the frame. There are an untold number of bloody scenes from Yemen that only exist in my mind. For me, just like my sister Hayat, who is also a photographer, flashing back to these scenes feels like free falling into the darkness. Sadly, we cannot stop the war. My beautiful pictures of Yemen are meant to remind people everywhere, regardless of their contacts of war or peace, that Yemenis appreciate love and life. We too wish to live our loves and our lives before that final moment that all human beings must face. that moment called death. If I show Yemenis living our lives and our lives, maybe that could help inspire the citizens of the world's powers involved in this war to question their leaders, lawmakers, and breakers. Why are you selling or buying weapons that are massacring Yemeni civilians? Maybe together we could stop this war. What is at the heart of this Most Resilient Journalist Award? It's not my resilience alone. It's a collective resilience of my people whose enduring spirits I can feel beyond space and time. We belong to peace, not war.
This piece was so beautifully produced. I probably speak for everybody if I say that I have all kinds of emotion. I'm saddened by the devastation that we saw. I admire your courage to keep going. It's pretty amazing to see how the creation of little community, like that dance circle outside. And I wanted to ask you, why is it important to you to document the war at this great risk, this great personal risk to yourself? Because I can't imagine doing all those things under those circumstances.
As I said, my camera is part of me, so I couldn't lose her. Like Yemenis were losing their lives and their livelihoods. With great personal risk came hope in the darkness and the possibility for accountability, change, and solidarity. If I could show both the beauty and the suffering to remind the world that Yemenis are human beings, full of dreams, stories, and perspectives, first, and then victims of crisis and conflict, second.
Right, so you're managing to do this by documenting. But what people couldn't see in this video is that you were actually arrested multiple times while trying to capture these images and stories from the front line. And with the first time being in 2018, and you told me when you were arrested that when they took your camera away, eventually you had to leave. But I know that you end up leaving almost a year after your arrest. So I feel that I was going to ask you, why did you leave? But I actually want to ask you, why did you stay for almost a year after your first arrest?
I never was planning to flee Yemen. But when I get arrested, I knew it's the time. There weren't any reason to stay. But then I had to gather materials before I go because I knew I'm going to be convicted again, because it has been a couple of years I was not convicted because of the war, and there's no electricity, no internet. So I had to gather material, and luckily when I left Yemen and I was traveling in a couple of countries, I was able to reach Washington Post, National Geographic, and The Guardian. So for that I had to wait to meet you today, to show you what is happening back in my country.
Mm-hmm. So as an artist, you feel like you're able to contribute to the document, to witness, to bear witness, and to show it to the world in all these amazing publications that you just mentioned. And I just want to stress that you are on a special artist visa right now in Paris. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to talking about your ongoing project of documenting women's lives. And I know that you've started this since before 2010, since before you came to the International Center for for photography. And when you first visited Suffolk 10 years ago, and you shared with us your work that's titled Unveiling Misconception, documenting the lives of women in Yemen, and then later also comparing it to women in the United States, what really impressed me is that you essentially showed us that despite the distance, despite the cultural differences, we are not all that different. We will show in a minute one of your projects documenting Saadia in Socotra Island, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about Saadia. Why do you consider her a woman with a fighting spirit?
I'm calling her Aunt Saadia because she's like a family for me. I consider Aunt Saadia a strong woman because she's just pioneering for us Yemeni women, if not talking internationally. I met Saadia 14 years ago. I met Saadia in 2014. But when I met her, she was already in 14 years of struggle against local tribesmen who were trying to take by force her inherited land. Saadia, she is living in Socotra Island. It's part of Yemen, but not in the main land. When I met her, I was searching for a source of inspiration, a woman that we Yemeni women need to meet and to get inspired with. So when I met her, it was a trip. I was in Socotra, and I got to meet with her, and I got to tell her about my project, and she agreed to be photographed. So it was my it was my first long-term story, and it took 2 years.
So you spent 2 years with covering her, which is something that I always want to, stress to students, that this kind of in-depth project take a long time to put together. So if it's an investigative article or something like that project. So let's watch it's really the images from Socotra are striking, and of Saadia and what you define as a love letter to Socotra.
زعوي حاد يا شبده خذوا عيني والكبده يرد لي من عنده وبشم على يده زعوي حاد يا شبده خذوا عيني والكبده يرد لي من عنده وبشم على يده إذا نادى ليل ساعد قريبة إذا نادى شفت بيت الضم إذا نادى وحنيش لفجره إذا نادى شفت إذا نادى عن وادي جنبر إذا نادى يا ربي ساعده إذا نادى عن قريب تجدوه إذا نادى عندي علي وصله إذا نادى عن قرز وفقيته إذا نادى عن من بعيد شوف حطأ إذا نادى عن قريب تجي إذا تعزل وتجي دان دان من بعيد قريب ضحي دان دان ويا لله ويا لله ويا لله ويا لله ها ها ودمع طدي بطننان ودمع طدي بطننان وتقطوي بعافية ها
Wow, these are pretty stunning. I love that last image when she's sitting, you know, she's commanding.
It was her secret place. I asked her, I was like, Aunt Sadia, what is your favorite place? So she took me one day. It was her fishing net. And as you can see, she's just a friend with everything around her. She's friend with nature, with human, with everything. She would tell me stories until 3 in the morning. She would tell me things. She would explain to me what is the size of a whale, because she has been seeing a whale in her life. She would be telling me things about the stars, the moon. She would be telling me where the rain gonna be falling now. She would be teaching me to be daring and fearless like her. In fact, she was the one who taught me swimming.
Wow, and I know that she can also dive, right?
She dive and swim since she was 8 years old. And she used also to go fishing for, her father used to go to Mukalla to work. And then she would have guests with her mom in the cave. And she would go do fishing for a fish and then return with food to her family in the cave.
Wow.
And this is what she has been fighting for, because this land, she really, when she was describing for me how is it for her, this land, and why it is for her, she told me the land is for the people who was born in, like she inherited, it's her grandfather, father, and grandfather land. So it was hers.
Yeah, it's her right. Absolutely. She inherited it. So as I'm watching these images of, you know, this representation of a Yemeni woman, I know both you and I consider ourselves Yemeni. I never set foot in Yemen, but I'm still very, very connected culturally to and I think that some parts of it is because this culture was not necessarily accepted in Israel. And so for many years there was this struggle. But I'm wondering, what does it mean to you to be a Yemeni woman, and how are you and me are similar or different from Saudia?
Habibati, first, you are 100% Yemeni.
Thank you.
That's for sure. And for us, I think we are similar to Aunt Sadia, because we want to live and we want to be alive. To feel alive is to feel connected, to feel inspired. We don't want any chance or any limits on our spirits. And that we are similar. We just don't accept any chance.
Right. So the search, you're saying the search for, you know, for independence and the ability to be free and to not be, we may experience different chains, but we all want to get out of that to find our path. So for me, one of the ways in which I connected with Yemeni culture was when I got married, and I had the traditional henna ceremony, which I'm sharing now with the audience. I sometimes share it with my students in my intercultural communication class. So you can see there would be different outfits that represent different places, geographic places in Yemen, but the headpiece is called gargush. And I was really excited to discover, Amira, that there were some influences between the Jewish and Muslim community in those rituals, and that's the gargush from Sana'a, and for the bride, the big tall one. And then you showed me the gargush that you were wearing, which is a little different, but it's something, this is just stunning. This is something that the bridesmaids are wearing. Unlike the bridesmaids outfits in America, this is really beautiful. So it was just exciting to discover these influences.
Yeah, we love gargush. In Yemen, there is many days for any bride, but one of those days it's the gargush day. But the gargush of the bride, it's much bigger than the one I was wearing. It's like yours.
Right, and right, you can see how the love of the colors, how everything is so colorful, the flowers, even on the gargush and the jewelry. That to me, I'm very much connected to that kind of artwork that was done by my ancestors in Yemen. So what do you think? I'm trying to think about the project that you developed later when you were in the United States. What were some of the similarities that you've seen between the women that you met in the United States and someone like Ansardia? Because at least on the surface, and I know I hear these questions many times from students where we're discussing different cultures, at least on the surface, they seem very different, right? One is all covered, and the other one wears very revealing clothes, performing and socializing with men. Where do you see the similarities there?
First, hi to Anna. I hope she is with us tonight. I really hope. I would just say words that had been said by Anna. She said, I would do what the hell I want to do. And that was exactly what Aunt Sadia said. I fear nobody. So in that, you can see like the same. Not seeing how they look like it's the spirit, the energy.
Right. So the sentiment, it's the same. It doesn't matter if it's I'll do whatever the hell I want to do, yeah. Or if I say it in Hebrew or Arabic. The sentiment is that the need, for search for what you want to do, for self-expression, for self.
Yeah, no matter what, you dance with fire, or you fight for your land, and you save you save your inherited. And in fact, Anna, she was not she was a film director, but dancing with fire, it was her
hobby,
and I love it. I just love how much time she was spending in her hobby.
Right, it was important to her. And I can see that Aunt Saadia is also doing what she loves to do, which is be in nature and this is probably one of my favorite pictures of her in the water, because it doesn't matter if she's wearing a diver suit or, a revealing bathing suit, she's still carrying the sensation that we all look for when we want to feel free, right?
She is so rooted to her land.
So I want to now bring into the conversation our students. So we brought 4 students. There are 4 students with us today, and some of them are journalism majors that they'll tell you. Some of them study photography and some global cultural communication. And we're going to start with the first students. They're all here. Okay, so why don't we start with Devani?
Yes. Hi, Amira. It's so good to hear more about your work. My name is Devani. I am a global and cultural communications major with a minor in history. And my question is regarding your war photography and documentation on women. You've said that you take pictures that show the beauty of Yemen, even though, quote, destruction, danger, or death often lurk just beyond the frame. You've also mentioned that you wonder if people in peaceful countries could better identify with more beautiful pictures. Do you think that's one of the main reasons inspiring your war photography and documentation on women? To show Yemen in a different light for international folks looking at your work? If so, do you think international people need the palatability in order to change their perspective on the nation?
Thank you, Daphne. It is really interesting, your question. Um, just trying. I'm not it's not a standard, but from my experience, people would say we don't see war in your photos, and as I said in the video, that danger is often lurks behind the frame. Danger danger could be a bullet, fire, bomb dropped. It's also empty bellies, water cans, viruses, diseases, silent killers. The frame, yes, it could show things as they are, but definitely there is other things. You can see them if you know what you are looking for. And for me, I think the way to do it just to search a balance, between the beauty and the devastation, to understand, as I mentioned earlier, the truth. And the truth is that not all war photos are bloody. I think it's important to train our senses to feel the invisible and to believe it.
Yes, that's a really good point, Amira, that not everything has to be in your face, right? So you can see it behind the image of this woman.
I mean, see, coronavirus, it's the most aggressive enemy, and it's invisible. And some people, they believe it. They believe about the virus, and they take all measures. And the others people, they just don't believe it because they just don't believe in the invisible.
Right. You jumped right into a very heated debate about misinformation here in the United States. So thank you, Devani. Thank you for this question. And I believe next we have Olivia.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. My name is Olivia Acevedo. I'm a junior at Suffolk and I'm a journalism major. And my question for you today is regarding the war in Yemen, as it is known as one of the worst humanitarian crises the world has ever seen. But many Americans specifically do not know about the war and what is currently going on today in Yemen. So are you looking to use your career as a photojournalist to spread more awareness to the world about Yemen and more so specifically to America?
Definitely, yes. Yes, simply because America is the greatest military power. And of course, the one who is supporting Saudis in their war in Yemen. So if a change happened in America, it's gonna happen back in my beloved country.
Right. So we need to be aware of the indirect effect of our, allies and political support and how it's fueling this ongoing conflict. So,
did I reply to your question?
Yeah. So thank you, Olivia. Next we have Fatima.
Hi, Amira. I'm Fatima. I'm a journalism major at Suffolk. I'm a freshman here. I just want to say thank you for sharing more about your work with us. It's very beautiful and I really appreciated it. So I've moved around a lot throughout my childhood between both the United States and Saudi Arabia. And I've always struggled with determining where home exactly is for me. So I'm wondering for you, since you now live in Paris, but you grew up in Yemen and in Saudi Arabia, where do you consider home right now?
That's a great question. Yeah. The location of home. Yeah.
Home. You are asking someone about home that who has a home in our zone, but since you are an artist, I'm gonna tell you where is my home. My home is my cave, my dark time. When I'm in the dark, and then I try to make art. I try to find some hope, and that's what I call home. It's the place where you can be blooming, and I don't know where you find yourself, but by example, for me, I find myself in my art school now in Paris. I find myself in my work, because those two places, they make me feel I'm blooming and I'm being able to communicate and express myself much better visually. So for now, that is what it is home for me until I find my home, and then I tell you where is home. But now it's the cave, but it's a beautiful cave. It's a beautiful. And I'm going to be in contact with Professor Shoshanna. I'm now doing some kind of beautiful art from my cave. And once it's ready, I'm going to be sharing it with you.
Oh, that's great. And really, I mean, this, Fatima, this question, you kind of jumped into an ongoing discussion that I have with other colleagues who are, moving around and in between culture. And it's always, it's a philosophical question. It's a question that we deal in global and cultural communication classes many times. And many of us deal with it in our own lives, that restlessness, that search for identity, because identity and home and identity of place are kind of connected. And I know I shared this with Amira. There is a great group of 3 young Yemeni sisters in Yemen who are singing in Arabic. And actually they were using a sentence in Arabic from their great-grandmother, and who was, migrated. And she said, Baiti Firasi in Arabic. Right, that's the title, their title song, which means my home is in my head. So I think it so beautifully demonstrates what you just said, Amira, that it's where you are right now, where your headspace, where your creativity. Baiti Firasi.
Thank you so much for that answer.
We talk more.
So next, I think we have May.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is May. I'm a current sophomore at Suffolk studying global and cultural communications. My question's about your inspiration. You have been an inspiration to women worldwide. Who inspires you and why? And as a young female photographer, what advice would you give to your younger self or to other young photographers?
Okay, it's an inspiration first. Inspiration, maybe it's someone you know. My inspiration is 3 women: Stephanie Sinclair, Maggie Steeper, and my sister Hayat in Yemen. And I said Stephanie because Stephanie, she is the one who took me, Fatma, to the world I always wanted to be in, the photography. And yeah, she is my mentor and the person I really, really, really want to be like. An advice for photographer: May, wake up early, catch the light. The light, yes. And keep working. Never think you're gonna find your chance. You just need to be ready for the big chance when it comes, because apparently you're gonna be having chances, but you need to be ready to pick up your chances.
Great. Great question. Determination, inspiration. I think both parts of your questions are connected, because find a great inspiration. And
I would just add one thing important. May, I had a dream. I always wanted to be a National Geographic photographer. It takes me 15 years to be published in National Geographic. That was a dream.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really, really a dream. So I think if you have a dream and then you just keep following with this dream, and then you're gonna have it. It doesn't matter how long it's gonna takes you, but you're gonna become the photographer you want in the process.
So I want to add now into the conversation, we've been getting some questions from the audience. So one question that relates, Amira, to our discussion about being multicultural and moving between cultures, somebody, I don't have the names, but someone said, it's an amazing work, Amira, love your work. What's the most common question you get from the first world, from the West? What's the most common question that you get from people in the West?
Can you explain it in another way?
I believe that's probably, yeah, I think this person meant a question about Yemen. So what kind of question you're getting from the West about Yemen, if I'm understanding this correctly?
Me too, if I understand it.
Yeah.
It's like you have civil war, always. Your civil war in Yemen. Who told you it's a civil war? This is like the biggest, the always repeated
misconception.
Yeah. And I always had to like explain it's okay, it's civil, regional, international. So it's with multiple dimensions.
So sometimes, just misconception about in the ways even the conflict is framed. That's why I said in the beginning that Yemen is stuck in a global.
And the way media is showing the ignored war in Yemen.
Yeah. We have a question about how your view, and again, I don't know if I entirely understand, to what extent did your view of Yemen change, or maybe some of the notions of Yemen change? How did New York, how was New York a change agent for you? Did your stay in New York changed you in any way?
Definitely. Being in New York, it was so important for me as in a personal level and professional career. I studied at ICP, and during this year, I was not only in a school. I was with mentors, with people who really, really care. I was with Alison Morley, Ed Kashi, Neil Jackson. I was with all those amazing people who was preparing me to be ready to survive the war, to be a good storyteller. And it's something I would say to you, Professor Shoshanna, because you have been in contact with me during the war. And I was totally disconnected. And I can tell you, those was my little few hopes when I was getting messages from people who really cared about me from America, even when I find the message after 2 months or 3 months, but that makes me know I'm not alone. I'm still, and that happened when I get arrested. I just realized how much I was followed by many people, but I was not aware.
Right.
So that makes me survive the war in Yemen.
It made you stronger. It's added, I think, to your already strong personality. And I'll add, somebody's asking here about the transition to Paris. What was that transition like?
I always wanted to be in Paris, but it was not. It was something has been in my mind for many years, because as New York was so important for me, it's like me have photojournalism and have art. New York was so important to build me as a storyteller, but I needed to come to Paris to study art. I needed to, I needed to strengthen my photojournalistic skills.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to know more, and I just needed to be in the most two connected cities in the world for me.
Right. And the most influential for art, obviously.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking here, this was a question from the audience, from Alice. She's asking, how can we help women in Yemen? What can we do? And what do they need to do to make change for themselves and others?
Thank you, Alice. There is an organization called Madmoni in Yemen, and the chairperson called Radia Al-Mutawakkil. So basically what they're doing is they are showing like some guidelines how you can be affecting the political process in America for women to be part in political side, because if you see in Yemen, the war was started by a man. But where is women in that? Like, we are not existed. And I know there's women who has really clear vision to end the war in Yemen, and they should be finding their own spaces and places to talk, to solve.
Right, so you're suggesting this organization, and I believe that the producers are going to share it with you guys in the chat, so you can see that. So I wanted to go back to ask you another question about your relationship with the camera. And I know it's kind of overlapping with some questions that audience members are asking about how you focus on what's the most important thing for you when you document people. So I'm going to ask you about this one particular picture that you shared with me, and you saw that what I see in this picture is that the camera is what gives you strength, but also draws attention to you, and not always in a good way. So you told me once that you are constantly a suspect, no matter where you go. So this picture seemed to me, it's just so powerful. It captures your role, your identity, your struggles, your success, all roll into one. I know when you first showed it to me, you told me he's sitting there with his weapon and I'm sitting with mine.
True. In fact, this picture was asked by the Australian photographer and a good friend of mine, Peter Adams, one who was mentoring me during all the years of war in Yemen. So he wanted me to have a self-portrait for me, since he wasn't really being able to come to Yemen for many years because of the war. So Peter, he was the author and photographer of few of the legends. It's already now and it's already published. So I'm gonna be in the book if you want to check Peter Adam books. So this photo, in fact, it was Peter. He told me, Amira, I want you to photograph yourself in the place where you feel yourself the most. And so it just came with the time. I was so mass in my mind because of what happened in Yemen, the war, and I couldn't really understand why. And so this photo came with that journey, my personal journey, to understand the mentality of war. This portrait, it represents the beginning of that journey, my first attempt to be close to my own people and to understand why is this war happening. I was in the south of Yemen. He was a soldier of a coalition-backed militia, and in a checkpoint. This photo was in 2017. I was holding my camera, and he was holding his gun, because for me, I knew, like, yes, my camera, it has many dimensional effects, but by the end of the day, it's a weapon. This is why they keep arresting my camera. So in this photo, like, I'm the one I'm from the north, he's from the south, and now being in Paris, I just realized something, because this happened later. I think we both were forced. He felt forced to fight, and a year later, I felt forced to flee Yemen. And but see, like, now we are sitting human to human, and when I make this photo, because I get to be near, I get to understand, because I had so much. Sorry, I get so much hatred for men. I was blaming them for creating the war in Yemen, for sustaining it. But when I was there, I get to see other things. And this photo, I wanted to remind you about humanity. And I wanted the world to remember this about Yemen. Because if you see earlier, there were a soldier who was crying. So I get to realize all of us are victims, even the one that I thought they were, like, causing the war, but I was just misunderstanding what was happening.
This is an incredible image to see him sitting next to the weapon.
He was crying, his friend, he died there. He was telling me he died here, so he was explaining to me what happened. And I never thought I'm gonna be seeing a man so fragile, and I just never thought they are affected as we are women.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And the producers are telling me that Peter is in the audience. So, hi,
Peter.
So I'll try to sneak in one more question quickly before we wrap it up. Somebody was asking, Robin was asking, what was your most satisfying image that you've taken and the story behind it? I believe we have a couple of images.
In fact, we have two pictures for the mosquito and the dumpsters, if you have them around. Thank you for the question. I just love all my pictures.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to May. With every time in your life as a photographer, you're gonna be loving a photo for some reason. Sometimes because you success to do this photo in that moment. Some other times because you success to make a strong message. So it depends. I have been working as a photographer since 18 years, but in this picture, like those two pictures, the mosquitoes and the dumpsters, it was because during the war, it was challenging for me how to show the bittersweet beauty suffering. And if you see in those two pictures, the picture of the mosquito, this one, it was for a woman who was burning wood, so some special kind of wood, so she can protect her kids from the mosquitoes. So we cannot see her features, but you can feel how the war is really toxic. And in the other photo, it was also the toxic flames, and this is if you wanted to know more about war, it's toxic. It goes in the air. You smell it. Yeah, beautiful to put them together. So if you can see, she is a woman to the left trying to protect her kids, and he was a photographer documenting the war. And in this photo, he called it "Returning from Hell." So if you can see the human part of the war, both men or women, they are struggling to survive the war. They are struggling to it's a toxic, everything toxic, the air, the water, the energy, the everything. So in these two pictures, but it's like, for me, the pictures that was good, that after make a change, or a good picture that could reach the people in power, the one who has the action to change our situation in Yemen.
Yeah, so very striking, very powerful. Amira, I want to end our conversation. I asked you in advance to think about what do you want to leave the audience with? We talked about some of the devastation. As you said, always, life exists in contradictions. I know sometimes we are kind of educated to think about more, to think about reality, or sometimes we do it because it's easier to think try to think in simple terms, bad, good. But you've shown us, even with how you think about the soldiers, your photos speak for that complexity. And I asked you to think about 3 photos that capture how you feel about the whole situation right now. What would you like to leave the audience with?
I would love to leave them with photos from Yemen. As you see, there is so many beautiful places in Yemen. So this it's a village in an area called Haraz, and in fact those houses, if you are inside them, you're going to be sitting, and the mist, they're going to be entered in the daytime from the windows, from the doors, and then you're going to be outside. You're going to be having the 4 seasons. It's going to be misty, sunny, rainbow, rain, all. So for me, this Haraz is the best place for me in Yemen, because you can be living the 4 seasons in one day. And in fact, it's where you can find good quality coffee, the plant of coffee. And the other picture, this one, it's we Yemeni people, we live in ginger houses, as your ginger cookies in the Christmas.
Wow, that does.
And this one, I
love this.
I would let you see it.
Who are they? What is this picture of?
This picture, it was for newlywed people, and in fact, this picture, it was the first picture they had it since they get married, and they were so excited. And I proposed to really photograph them again, but I had to leave. Unfortunately, I never was able to give them the presents or to see them again.
Oh, it's so beautiful to see the smile and the hug and the love and the hope. I hope that they're well and that you get to give them this picture someday. I can't thank you enough for this beautiful conversation, Amira, and for your amazing contribution, for your people. You are beautiful inside out, and your art is so powerful. And we are just so lucky to have you and to learn about your work and about the people of Yemen. So thank you so much. Shukran kathir.
Inti shukran kathir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Amira, thank you so much. You have really just touched my heart so deeply. Shoshi, thank you so much for your stellar moderation as usual. What an amazing afternoon. Thank you so much. I want to thank the audience for joining us today and joining us for our final episode of our trilogy. This was the second part of our Beyond Borders, Women and the Art of Bearing Witness I want to thank our women storytellers who participated in the series, Catherine Fiu, who started off the series with a wonderful program, Turning Your Body into a Compass, followed by Alicia Partnoy and Musakua. And of course, today, Amira Al-Sharif. They moved us, they inspired us with their courage, their bravery, their artistry. We want to lift them up and honor them. They have touched women around the world and men and children. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a very lovely evening. Goodbye.